Hello, I'm Chris Flisher, and welcome to Turning of the Wheel, an intelligent, lively discussion on astrology, art, and adventure. Timing is everything, and as the great wheel turns, we are best prepared when we are best informed. Join me as I explore the current planetary alignments and offer insights for coping with change. Educational, informative, enlightening, the Turning of the Wheel is a welcome pause in your daily swirl of constant change. Through intelligent discourse, inspired guests, and educational segments, I will help to enlighten your knowledge of astrology and guide you to accept change as the great wheel of life turns. Call in with your questions and speak with some of the greatest visionaries in the time-tested practice of astrology. Turning of the Wheel, Astrology, Art, and Adventure with Chris Flisher, each week on Turning of the Wheel podcast. Hello and welcome to Turning of the Wheel. My name is Chris Flisher. As you know, this is a show about astrology, and we're in a great age of astrology. We're coming to terms with the planetary transits. We're in a time of great transition, and yet there's great optimism on the scene as well. We'll be talking today with an old friend and astrologer, Jackie Slevin, who I've been trying to get on the show for many years. This is actually the 12th anniversary of my show, so I kind of feel honored to have her on to talk about such a momentous occasion as Jupiter in Sagittarius, which is what we're going to be talking about. Her site is geocosmicstudies.com, and we'll be talking about that. Before we get started, I want to remind you about my newsletter, which goes out every Sunday afternoon. You'll find a couple of paragraphs of mundane astrology in there, and then I break out individual signs for the week to come. As you know, if you read your sun and your sign, your rising sign together, you're going to get a more accurate picture of what's to come, and you can plan accordingly. So without any further ado, let's get my guest on, Jackie Slevin. Her website is geocosmicstudies.com. And we're here to talk about Jupiter and Sagittarius. So, Jackie, it's great to have you on the show finally. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Well, I'm very happy to be here, Chris. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, sure. So it's a great time. I mean, I think back to this time 12 years ago, and I was just thinking, oh, wow, this is when I started my radio show back then. And that was quite a while ago, and things were much different back 12 years ago, and yet we feel a certain kind of ebullience and optimism that comes along with this, especially where we are standing on this cusp of this remarkable midterm election. I mean, it really bodes, hopefully it bodes well for that situation. And I'm curious what you have to say about sort of overall arching comments about Jupiter and Sagittarius.
Well, Sagittarius is Jupiter's home sign, and also Pisces is traditionally Jupiter's home sign. But right now we're focusing on Sagittarius, and where it is the most comfortable is where it will operate at its most optimum level. And Sagittarians and Jupiterians, especially those who have Jupiter in Sagittarius, these people need a great deal of freedom. They don't like restrictions. They want things to come and go. And once they embrace a certain ideology, they cling to it very, very steadfastly. It has to be an ideology that they agree with and that suits their purposes. Jupiter and Sagittarius is also very pro-education, very pro-travel, and very pro people who don't like to make commitments and need to come and go as they please, as they choose.
Yeah, it's really about expansion. I always think of Jupiter as about expansion, so that's why the idea of travel and education are so appropriate, because that's where you go to get your mind broadened. You read more through education, you become more broadened. You travel, you see other people's lives, you become more broadened in your view of the world. So it's great for that.
Absolutely. It's custom-made for that. If you have been postponing a trip you've wanted to take for years, the best time to do it is when Jupiter is in Sagittarius, because that's when you'll have access to the globe as you want it. Mm-hmm. And it's the best education you could possibly have because you're living it. It's not passive like you're reading a book. You're actively involved in it, and you get lifelong lessons that way. And
there's a great sort of ebullience. You can almost feel undercurrent in the climate that there's there. You can almost feel this entryway coming in as people are looking at tomorrow being election day and what's going to happen and how that's going to turn, if it turns to the tide, as we maybe hope it does in some cases. But it's interesting how to see that great optimistic expansion. It's an opportunity for, I think, humankind to really up its game and step forward in some way, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It also eliminates restrictions. And Sagittarius is animals and wildlife and nature. And I think we're going to see more...
So that's okay.
That's my Siri in the...
Oh, my gosh. Siri is getting in the way there.
Yeah.
We're having a three-way conversation with a machine.
Well, that's
funny.
Technology for you.
I
But
know.
animals and wildlife and nature will definitely get a shot in the arm. Jupiter and Sagittarius also rules legislation. And then we'll see more laws being put in place about the protection of wildlife, protecting nature, Sierra Club and that sort of thing. These things will become front and center in the news, like not destroying the rainforest and the Amazon, protecting the things in South Pacific, where they're decimating the forests in Borneo and Sumatra, just killing the wildlife off left and right. I think we're going to see more laws about this coming into place.
One of the things that I always associate with Jupiter is amplification. So, and this can be a good thing and a bad thing, because anytime if something bad gets amplified, that gets worse. And we just saw, when you mentioned the Amazon, we saw that Bolsonaro got elected in Brazil, and he's talking about tearing the things down. So I wonder if that's an amplification of that in the wrong direction. Well, I'm curious what you think about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that there's going to be mayhem in the areas where people are going to set out to destroy nature. I think that's going to be a very key issue in the next couple of years, particularly, year and a half, for the amount of time that Jupiter does remain in Sagittarius. Protecting the wildlife will become very crucial. I just read the other day there's 3.8-something million acres in Northwest Territory in Canada that will not be developed. 3.8 million acres. It's a whole lot of land.
Then they put that aside as conservation land?
Correct. There can be no development. There can be no drilling. Animals can do whatever they want. It's just complete freedom, complete land nature going back to the way it was.
Right. So do you think that this is an opportunity for some of the regulations that have been deregulated through the current administration to be re-regulated once again?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, that would be a hopeful side, I think, if we could see some of those put back.
Yes, extremely hopeful.
Yeah.
Jupiter and Sagittarius is optimism. So as you were saying earlier, there's this wonderful, upbeat, can-do approach that people will have to maintaining nature, and progress in education and different forms of travel. I think there might be more developments in space travel over the next year with Elon Musk. I really do, because when Jupiter and Sag facilitate, there was a lot of transition from going on from the age of sail to steamships, and here we have intergalactic travel, and I think there's going to be more of an emphasis on that, despite the fact, as you were saying, that the amplification, we're going to amp up travel, we're going to amp up education, while we amp up problems on the planet that may or may not be addressed at the expense of amping up education and travel.
Right. So there's a sort of a cyclical nature to that, whereby our renew, because of the amplification of the damage being done to the planet, we'll have an amplification of those attempts to address those concerns, I think. So it'll be a highlighted influence no matter how we look at it, because it'll be just amplified in all capacities, which is the side you've got to dance carefully around, because I think with Jupiter in the situation, you can enter into situations where things get a little bit out of control. But I think ultimately the goal of Jupiter, or the modus operandi, for lack of a better word, is to bring that optimism to a point where we see evolutionary progress. We don't want to see backtracking. And I think that when you cast your eye out across the population, and we see how education in the United States has really become a sort of a minimalist topic in some ways. It's been downgraded. It hasn't been given the importance or the backing that it needed. This might be a perfect opportunity to see some of those things turned around, where education is now brought into a place where people are more concerned about getting educated, because they see how little they can go, how far they can't get without it.
Not only that, teachers will become a focal point. And it's going to get to the point that if you want quality education for children and teens, you have to pay these people a living wage. Yeah. You can't expect them to get up every day and go to work and have to provide their own pens and their own crayons. I mean, come on. You and I didn't have that when we were kids.
No.
Everything was there for us. It's not there for kids now. And the focus will go back to the basics of education, that teachers will be provided what they need. Or if they're not, that's going to be amplified to the nth degree until they do get what they need.
And we've seen several groups of in several states across the country, teachers have begun to bound together to go on strike to demand these kinds of things, because these are basic, elemental things. It's almost absurd that a teacher, one of my daughter-in-laws is a teacher, and she has to go out and buy stickers and pencils and stuff for her kids, and it's like, why is this happening? It just seems so.
That's right.
It's so outlandish. It's just ridiculous that it's come to this, but I'm hoping that this is an opportunity to renegotiate some of those terms, and I think that the people have the power. If the vote comes through, the people have the power to find that to be the case, and it'll be an opportune time for them. But leading on, especially in the United States, I don't know which chart you use, but I typically use the chart that comes up through the Sibley chart with the Sagittarius rising, and so that would mean that in my case, the Jupiter coming across the ascendant and of the United States. And when we look at where we are now today, I mean, this is shocking that tomorrow is the day this is all happening. When we look at the world today and we see that opportunity there, we could see a major sort of correction, couldn't we?
Absolutely. And one of the things with Jupiter, as I said earlier, is travel and cross-cultural and the world. And Jupiter in Sagittarius is also immigration.
Yeah,
okay?
Of course.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So here we have all this coming up from Central America and through Mexico, and allegedly all coming here. It will throw the spotlight on people are still coming here in droves, no matter what other people think are things about America with gun culture and that sort of thing, mm-hmm. and mass shootings and of the bad reputation that we do get abroad. And I understand that. However, people are still coming here in droves because of the freedom to the individual that we offer. We must keep in mind that in America, we are entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which mm-hmm. is really quite Jupiterian.
Yes.
And we're entitled to that as citizens, and that's really not on paper in any other nation, which is why people keep coming here, because they're entitled.
They're entitled to it. It's one of the basic cornerstones of our whole entire foundation, democratic process, and it's a vital piece. It is very Jupiterian, and I love that about this country, and that's what we all love about this country, is the ability. But it's being taken away from us gradually, and that's why I think the time is most auspicious to have Jupiter entering into this, especially at this point in time with the election happening. And I think that there's a sort of an expansive quality, as we all know, with Jupiter. And I think that the fact that the rhetoric has heightened to the point where people are running out in droves to register to vote indicates that swelling presence as well coming into the sign.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, mm-hmm. because there's this mad rush for optimism. There's this mad rush to remove restrictions mm-hmm. and to get us back to the freedoms that we're so accustomed to. Because you're right, many of our civil liberties are being eroded, and that has to end.
Yeah, and it's being done very surreptitiously. So I think that,
extremely.
Behind the scenes, there's all this chatter going on of what's happening, and then behind the scenes, there's regulation after regulation being overturned and turned away, and it's just astounding. But I think that this is a time when truth, and I think of, Jupiter as being a planet that represents truth and optimism both, and I think that truth will prevail ultimately. We have to believe that, otherwise it's going to be hard to exist on the planet if we can't keep truth in our sights.
Absolutely, you're so right about that, and it's the truth will set us free, and we have to get back to the truth and to remove all these cover-ups, which is so indicative of Jupiter and Scorpio. They're going to be blown off, and the truth comes out whether people want to hear it or not, or face it or not. They're going to have to.
Yeah, you can only suppress it for so long, and I think it bodes very well as a foreshadowing of what's to come up in the 2020s when we have Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto all together in Capricorn. I see that as a major overhaul of a restructuring kind of. So when we use the word major overhaul of governmental structures and stuff like that, people may think that we're going towards in a different direction. We become to see that. But I think this is a time when our collective psyches have been so prodded and woken up by what we've witnessed that we are now forcing the pendulum the other direction in the most grand manner, because this is what Jupiter gives us, that collective push to sort of push this over and get back what we've lost and to really reclaim it. I think it's a real opportunity.
Absolutely, and Jupiter rules religions, mm-hmm. and Sagittarius rules organized religion, and there's going to be more laws against any type of religious discrimination. I mean, people came here, the Pilgrims came here to escape religious persecution, okay? That's how it started in the 1620s. The people will still be coming here for the same reason, seeking asylum. Organized religion is going to come into the spotlight, for better or worse, and there are going to be laws against hate crimes. I mean, like any type of religious persecution will get the kibosh on it quickly, and because laws will have to. I mean, hate crimes and laws against them will have to intensify and to suppress anything related to hate.
Yeah. And I think that Jupiter and Sagittarius provides that because of all the great things that you mentioned. I mean, the sort of the religious aspects, the sort of the education, the travel, all of those promote tolerance and acceptance across a larger body of people. You know, as I said before, when you read books, you learn more. When you go travel, you learn more because you're exposed to new people and psyche and vistas, and your whole realm of your whole purview is broadened as a result. So, and then when you take into account then the idea of religious tolerance and what we can do with it, we can see that this is solvable. But I think in the irony of it all that we had to go to this. The pendulum had to swing this far in one direction in order to make us wake up. Because now I think the call, the clarion call to arms has gone out, and people, are running out. I mean, there's more people who are registered to run for office than ever before, and a lot more millennials are voting. And these are all very optimistic, Jupiterian, positive signs that we are headed in the right direction. And we can only hope. It's not going to be easy. I'm not saying that's going to be just going to click bang overnight, but we'll get a pretty good indication on Wednesday morning where we stood and if this is an accurate depiction of what Jupiter does for us.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. It will broaden our perspective across the board, and people are going to get their bubble burst.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and the thing about scary about that is because we don't know which way the bubble will burst. I'm hoping it's going one direction, but we don't know. And
we don't.
We can only tell that that's the case. But when you think of Jupiter as a presence, and its slow turn, it takes about a year, roughly 13 months in some cases, to go around because it goes through a retrograde period. We find this sense coming through our lives of opportunity and times when it gets exacerbated. And so having Jupiter in your second house might mean that you're going to be getting a good raise, or you might be getting some money or inheritance, or whatever. But it also could mean that your student loans are due, and you're struggling with mortgage payments, or whatever, because it is the topic of money. It just depends upon how it's represented in the chart in your own personal life at that time.
Yes, it also, as I said, Jupiter rules excess, and if that is going, as for the example that you mentioned, if Jupiter is going through your second house and you've been spending too much, well, spend more on your bills and less on yourself.
Yeah, it's about that simple. Yeah, but when you think back, to 12 years ago, when say roughly this time in 2006, when we were in the same situation, we try to look for other kinds of opinions at the time of what was going on then. Now, that was before the housing crisis burst, and that's before a lot of that stuff happened. But there was a sense of, we'd gone through the Y2K debacle, and we'd made it over the hurdle. We were on our way into the next century here, and so we thought we were going to be fine. And when you look back at that time, do you see similarities in your own personal life that you can recall and how they would be indicative of your future now?
Yes, I do. But they would be personal. In 2006, I was writing a book. In 2008, my book came out. And in 2006, I was pushing the envelope, if you might say, pushing the boundaries of my own comprehension of astrology and horoscopes and what they can tell us and what they can't, and codifying that into my Slevin system of horoscope analysis, which ended up being a book. So I took an idea and I ran with it, and I just kept running. It's
a great idea. It's a great book, and it's called Finding Success in the Horoscope. It's you can find it on Amazon and on your website as well, I trust, right?
Yes.
Geocosmicstudies.com. It's all one long word. Geocosmicstudies.com is one long string of words for Jackie's website. My guest is Jackie Slevin today. We're talking about Jupiter in Sagittarius, which of course is where it's the sign that Jupiter rules, and we'll see, and typically represents, depending upon where it is in your own personal chart, where you might see some amplification or optimism or opportunity for success, or at least growth in some capacity. I think growth is probably more apropos than success, but I think that growth is necessary to have success. Don't you think that the two have to go, and if you want to have success in some manner, you've got to learn to grow into that success, I think. So that's why those...
Absolutely. If you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always gotten. And if you want change, you have to be able to put your foot forward in a place where it's never been, and then keep going in that direction, and opportunities happen, doors open.
And it's key that you know where this is in your individual's chart, because without the individual knowing that, you don't know where to put your emphasis. Now, that's not to say that you can't find Jupiter, optimism in other parts of your life, but typically it is where it's transiting in your life. You have your natal chart has Jupiter natally, of course, but when you see it transiting at this point in time into the next house that you're going to, in the second half of the show, we'll probably get into the houses at least a little bit and describe what that looks like. But I think it has the opportunity to, especially with regard to, I love the idea of, the religious piece that you mentioned earlier. I've always thought of that as a very Jupiterian and Sagittarian kind of quality, or concept rather. And I think that, now that we have seen so much of this sort of hate crimes coming out of against religions, it really does force the point of how do we resolve this. And I think that just having that conversation on the table makes it more viable and more likely to have a success at the end, and likely to have a happy ending, I guess is what I should say.
Oh, you're absolutely right, and it's what you were saying earlier. The way to come to grips with this and to solve any issues in this area is what you said earlier, tolerance and acceptance.
Yeah.
You have to agree. You have to agree on what you'll tolerate and agree on what you'll accept. And to do that, you have to come to the bargaining tables and take a different stance on what you thought earlier, because you're going to have to make adjustments in your thinking.
Yeah.
We're all the same.
Yeah, it's important to understand too. I think that the value of Jupiter and what it allows you to do. It doesn't have it imbues people with a greater sense of largesse, I think is the word, depending upon where it is in your chart. And largesse, I think, is sort of a stepping into a challenge, perhaps, or stepping out in the world and saying, here I am, I'm going to expand, hear me roar, kind of speak, where you are bringing yourself out. And eventually, it's a great time to reinvent yourself in some ways, especially if you have a good placement for it. And I've got a son who I'd love to see go back to school. I'm hoping I can prod him during this time to get him back into school. This time, it's an opportune time for him to go. And he's got Sagittarius on the ascendant, and I think this would be a great time for him to go back to school. And so these are the kinds of things that I find to be very optimistic. I'm an optimistic person by nature. I've got Jupiter in Aries in my 8th house. I love the whole idea of optimism and these great topics that we talk about in large philosophical subjects. And so I find that the opportunity for Jupiter to be there and to take advantage of it is really, if you don't take advantage of it, it's a missed opportunity. So even if you're sitting on the fence and you know where your Jupiter is in your chart, I think that this allows you an opportunity to say, now's the time to maximize that. Now's the time to sort of, rise to who you really are. And I think it's valid in that regard.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you're sitting on the fence, an opportunity will come your way, whether it's a bird landing on your shoulder when you had a light bulb moment, to only reinforce your faith in action, because little signs will come and land in your lap as to what direction you can pursue. And just keep breathing in and breathing out, and revelations will come to you when Jupiter is in Sagittarius. And as you said, based on where it is in your chart, that's where the revelations will come.
Yeah, and we'll go through the different houses in the second half of the show, and we'll be getting there shortly. But just in general, I mean, what is your overall look at what's your gut feeling on this current ingress? I mean, what's your sort of overall philosophic take, or have you sort of summarized that?
My take on this is that cover-ups will be blown off, the truth will come out, anything financial that has been exaggerated, for example, income inequality, which is such a huge issue in our country now, the disadvantaged will have hope. Mm-hmm. And we need that very badly here. There'll be a great shot in the arm to the American people of a sense of optimism, and to reach out and go where we haven't gone before, or that we have not gone in quite some time.
Yeah.
There'll be room for growth in areas that were previously overlooked. Mm-hmm. And people have to seize opportunities.
Yeah. It seems as if we've hit an apex, a low point, I should say, of civil discourse in the country, and we know where it's all coming from. And it seems to me as if that, in some ways, is indicative of this sort of building up, sort of the applying pressure of Jupiter coming into, and it's during that applying pressure we always feel the most sort of the wave, and then after it's moved on, we can look back and see that. But this applying pressure coming up of Jupiter really spells out, I think, this time of, as you mentioned, optimism and a chance to start over and to right wrong things. But we have done an awful lot of damage that's been done over the last 2 years that has to be sort of rectified, and maybe this is a chance to get some of that stuff back in shape.
Yes, and the reason, I shouldn't say the reason, but the conditions to make that happen, like one of those Big Ben jigsaw puzzles with 1,000 pieces,
Mm-hmm.
okay? The pieces will start to come together to see how we can make this happen.
Yeah, and there has to be some sort of a structure to it. I mean, we have to find, there will be resistance, I suppose. There will be some sort of pushback somewhere. But I think that the collective, even if you just look at the popular vote for 2 years ago, we know how this would have gone had popular vote mattered. We can only hope that the popular vote carries the situation in the current analysis and the coming vote. And people have to vote. I mean, if you're listening to this show, and you've got to get out and vote. There's just no question about it. It's the only real civic tool that we have in order to make things right. If we don't like what we're seeing, this is the only way we have to make it better. And this opportunity is here with Jupiter and Sagittarius. It's a wonderful time for, especially being it's a time of growth, it's a time of optimism. I think it's a time of tolerance, but there also is the ability for people to inflame things and to amplify, because Jupiter does have that amplification quality as well. So we've got to be mindful of that. I think just being mindful is all you really take. But if your intention is set properly, I think we have the ability to turn this gigantic ship around and get it right and back on the right track again.
Yes, I would agree with that. However, we must also keep in mind that with religion, we have the fundamentalism. The flip side of open-mindedness is fundamentalism, and Sagittarius rules that as well.
Yeah.
And we have to be on the lookout for that, because as there will be, we're not looking at utopia after November 8th. Just because Jupiter goes into Sagittarius does not indicate utopia, but it does heighten perspectives, the wide-opening perspective and the rigid perspective. Mm-hmm. And there will have to be, both will come to the negotiating tables, whether they like it or not.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. And I think the idea of, the fundamentalists, there has to be a certain reckoning there. And this might be a chance for that to reckon how you can have a set of scriptures or bylaws or commandments, however you want to refer to them, as your structure for your baseline, and then to be acting in completely opposite directions of that. There's got to be some sort of, that huge disconnect has to be repaired somehow, and hopefully that can happen during the course of this.
It will rise to the surface, and it will not go away.
Right. Yeah.
It has to be addressed. Mm-hmm. Jupiter won't let it go away.
Right. And the fact that it has to be addressed means it gets our attention and it becomes a topic. And sometimes these topics just need to be aired in a public forum where the obvious is stated. We're talking today with Jackie Slevin. Her website is geocosmicstudies.com, geocosmicstudies.com. That's GEOCOSMIC studies.com. One long string of words there. I encourage you to go check out her work there, and her great articles and her blogs are there as well. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back in a few minutes to continue our discussion. We're going to go through the houses of Jupiter, and we'll let you know where that'll be and how that'll play out. So hang in there. I'll be right back.
What is your destiny? Where are you going? What is your real purpose? Do you know? Do you want to know? Of course you do. It's your duty to yourself. We are all here for a reason, and we all have great potential. Discover all of this and more with a professional astrology reading. My name is Chris Flisher, and I can help you. Discover your strengths and work on your weaknesses, and live your life to its fullest capacity. Based on your birthday, birthplace, and birth time, an authentic astrology reading will allow you to live your life to the fullest and reveal your true purpose. Only real astrology can give you real information. It is your destiny, and it is your path. Write me at chris@chrisflisher.com and book a reading today, or call me at 978-393-1036. That's 978-393-1036. www.chrisflisher.com.
Astrology is the science of spirit, and it can serve as an invaluable aid in making the difficult choices in life and seeking truth in all the directions we choose. It holds the potential to allow each of us to evolve to our highest potential. It is the logic of the universe, the code of existence, and the pathway to true wisdom. It is our duty to draw from it the instructions for our lives and to live them to our fullest potential. As the great wheel turns, we are best prepared when we are best informed.
Hi, your host, Chris Flisher here. I've been producer and host of this podcast and radio show for the past 10 years. My goal has always been to provide enlightening, progressive, and logical discussions about where we are as a species and how we move ourselves further down the road towards our greater potential. I believe astrology provides a great tool for observing our progress and awakening our consciousness to becoming a whole, better, and more complete individuals. I have sought to invite the best contemporary guests, thought leaders, and progressive minds to discuss topics that concern us all, regardless of your beliefs. Consider making a contribution through PayPal to help keep the great wheel turning so that I can continue for the next 10 years along the same enlightened path. As always, I thank you for your support. Okay, welcome back to Turning of the Wheel. My guest today is the one and only Jackie Slevin. Her website is geocosmicstudies.com. She's an impressive astrologer with years of experience and was a theater major years ago, which I find to be very interesting. But we're going to be talking today with the rest of the segment here about Jupiter in the various houses, because if you look at your chart and you know your chart, you know where transiting Jupiter is, hopefully, and you'll be able to see the impact of what that looks like as we go through. So, Jackie, I'm going to turn it over to you to go through the houses with us, and then we'll just keep the conversation moving that way.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
If you have Jupiter in your first house, you're going to get a massive dose of what Chris and I were speaking about earlier, about this heightened optimism and this broadened awareness of the world around you. What you thought, you're going to get a new normal, and not necessarily through a bitter experience, but from a mind-boggling experience that changes your perspective, and you'll want to learn more about what challenged you. And you're just going to want to keep on learning. So your whole purview on the world around you will be broadened, and you're going to be pulled in a direction that you have not been pulled in previously, and you're going to like it. And keep following your bliss in this area. The downside of having Jupiter go through your first house is that you can overdo things. Jupiter is the great one. So what the downside of it is that you can put on weight because you just keep eating, you just keep ordering dessert and more chocolate cake and whatnot. And again, see, Jupiterians and Sagittarians don't want restrictions. What do you mean I have to sit within a certain caloric intake? What do you mean my pants don't fit, okay? So you may be inclined to put on weight because your perspective is only for your waistline. You just want more and more and more. Instead of mental perspective, you're looking only at your physical perspective. And Jupiter and Sagittarius wants you to pitch out. It wants your mind to go pitch out. Now, Jupiter going through your second house is that your income can increase. Your resources can increase. You may get a raise. You may go spending on things that you've always wanted but never thought you could afford, and now you're going to treat yourself or you'll treat others.
Yeah.
Your budget will be more than you thought it was. You might be able to save money to take your trip or whatever the case may be, but more resources will be available to you. The downside of it is now that you have these resources available to you, use them wisely. Don't blow it. Mm-hmm. Jupiter in the second house can make you overspend.
Yeah, you got to be cautious of that because it can also mean that student loans come due or you've got big loans to pay. So it's all about that amplification of anything. Amplification should be applied both ways, I think, or at least in some capacity.
Amplification, Chris, you're so right. Amplification has to be applied both ways for the positive and the negative, depending where Jupiter is throughout your chart. It can do wonderful things to you. It can put you in debt. It can send you to the racetrack and you really don't know anything about betting. Well, that would be Jupiter in the fifth house. I'm getting ahead of myself. But, and you don't know anything about gambling and you just won a couple $100. Oh, God. And if you put money on the wrong horse or whatever the case, or you go to the casino or whatever, you can lose whatever you brought and more. Mm-hmm. Okay? So it works both ways. Yeah. And you have to be careful here. Now, Jupiter going through your third, new neighbors, a new vehicle, new discoveries in your locale, in your neighborhood, new ways of getting to work. Either that or opportunities with siblings, opportunities in education, new forms of reading. Maybe you bought the Kindle that you always wanted to buy, and now you're going to read books on a screen instead of from a book, you know, because the third house is your comprehension. The third house is your automatic pilot in your mind. You know how to read. You know how to write, okay? So you're going to answer mail a different way. You're going to pay your bills a different way, whether you go to the post office or you just do it online. Different ways of connecting with people, different chat rooms, that sort of thing, with Jupiter on the third.
And if you're a writer, it's a great time to start writing that book you've always wanted to write.
Yeah, this is when you gather your ideas and you put them in order. Not necessarily put them in order, but it's wonderful for brainstorming. Jupiter on the third loves to brainstorm.
Yeah.
And get these ideas coming at them left and right. And you'll be open to learning a new subject that you weren't otherwise shut off from. You'll be introduced to something.
Yeah.
Now, Jupiter going through your fourth, that's home upgrades, home improvement.
Home improvements,
Yeah, in any possible way that you can. If you don't like your home and you don't want to put money into it, well, you might move. You might consider doing that. Or you'll break the bank and upgrade your home so that you can get a better price on it downstream. Or you'll want to add to your home, add a room, put on a new roof, whatever the case may be. You want to upgrade your living quarters. Also, it can add insight into genealogy now that we have these wonderful sites online that can help us trace our ancestors.
Interesting. Never thought of that. That's really interesting.
Oh, yeah. The fourth house is your ancestors.
Well, yeah, and I just never thought of it. I've never thought of it. So it was a way of. That's a great idea. I love that. I love that idea.
Yeah, it's fascinating once you learn more about your roots and your great grandparents and that sort of thing, and you can do it now online.
Yeah.
And it's something that was completely closed to us, and these are new revelations. So we learn about who we are in our DNA, what we're susceptible to. And you can find out how relatives died and that sort of thing, and the date of their birth, and more about your human tribe.
Yes, but your human tribe, your closest family, those that are closest to you. It's a time of, I think, of great optimism. You may be celebrating some sort of an occasion during that time, like a wedding, perhaps, of a family. The family's growing in that regard. So you're welcoming somebody new into your family when one of your children gets married, for example. That's another, I think, manifestation of the same thing too. Yes,
it is. Yes, and discovering your human tribe and also your own human chain, and you will. It's this marvelous sense of coming home. And I don't mean home in a building. Home in your psyche, where you feel comfortable and protected in your psyche.
Home is really a metaphor for your security and your comfort zone. It's really that. It's not necessarily the physical building. It's more I think the difference is a house and a home.
That's right.
A house is the physical building. The home is the family.
That's right. Yeah. And the home is what you feel inside.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And also revelations about a parent. Mending fences with a parent or a grandparent.
Or a sibling.
Yeah.
Oh, no, that's the third house. Third house would be third house.
Mending fences with a sibling is the third. Yeah. Cousins, too. Cousins are important because cousins are the third house. And neighbors. You can make wonderful friends with your new neighbors, or your new neighbors may be cross-cultural, and now you're going to learn something about their culture, even smelling the odors coming from their kitchen. You're learning something new, right?
Yeah, every day, exactly. I love that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like whether you're aware of it or not, it's curry, what's that? Oh, that smells good. What is that? Right? Now you're learning something. You're opening yourself up to something that you didn't know 8 months ago.
That's right, yeah.
Right. So Jupiter going through the fifth, well, if you're a woman, you could have a child.
Yeah.
I've seen that happen more than once, and it's wonderful. It's wonderful to connect with children, with teens, with artists, with athletes, to do anything recreational, to just go out and redefine fun. Fun. The fifth house is all about fun and entertainment, throwing the dice and falling in love.
Yeah, and being creative, I think it's a great time to branch into a new creative realm or to expand your own creativity. Perhaps try something new. You know, if you're an artist, try a different medium, a different form, a different kind of context for what you're doing. It has great potential there. But the fun piece is really fun. There's no question about that.
Oh yeah, and the hobbies. The fifth house is your hobbies.
Mm-hmm.
Now, hobbies are not something that it's something that you do. It's a labor of love. The fifth house are your labors of love. All because it's connected to a hobby and something that you like to do, and you can perfect your hobby. You can become an amateur. Well, or you would be an amateur. Now, you could be an amateur artist. An amateur is someone who does something for love and just doesn't get paid for it. But amateurs can be fantastic. They can have very high levels of talent. They just don't equate it to the marketplace.
Right. I think the thing about an amateur that's interesting is that they sort of discovered it on their own, and so they didn't have the formal training that they may have had, which in some ways is very liberating because it allows them to go off and create new ways which haven't been discovered yet.
Absolutely.
So.
It's also entertainment, movies, theater, anything that's open, like old movies, that sort of thing. Hollywood is the fifth house phenomenon.
Yeah. It's great, too. It's
Tinseltown, anything related to that. If you have a favorite actor or actress, you're going to follow them. You're going to want to see all their movies. You're going to want to see more movies. You're going to want to go see shows wherever, you know?
Mm-hmm.
That sort of thing.
Yeah.
And don't, if you have kids or if you don't connect to kids, you will now with Jupiter going through your fifth house because it's going to redefine your sense of fun and youthful optimism.
Yeah, and which is a great thing to have to get hooked on. I'll tell you right now.
Oh, yes. Oh, absolutely. Now, Jupiter going through your sixth, this is your daily grind. These are medical issues. These are pets, and your diet, how you go about staying healthy or how you don't go about staying healthy. If you always wanted to get into a regimen of working out, well, Jupiter going through your sixth is going to make you do it. If you really wanted to streamline your diet and get it to be exactly the way you want it to be, well, that can happen too. But again, Jupiter can go the other way in the sixth house and make you forget all these things because you don't want to be tied down to going to a gym. You just maybe you'll go for walks instead. You'll want to be out in nature because you don't want to be boxed in. So if you're going to exercise, you might be more inclined to do it outdoors than indoors.
Right.
If you're going to cook, you might want to do it on a grill outside and not inside. It's a delicate point, but you're going to want to be free of any kind of restrictions.
Right. And I think it gives you another opportunity to sort of explore new options, too, as far as health and new dietary patterns if you're trying to make yourself healthier. It's a way of, discovering new exercise routines. I think those are all very valuable things, but by the same token, there is that amplification process there that can, exacerbate something that forces you to then take action. So.
Oh, absolutely. Also, cross-cultural, because Jupiter is other cultures.
Yeah.
International forms of healing, homeopathic medicines from another country that you get on Amazon, as opposed to just going to the drugstore and buying Vicks, something like that. What broadens your mind where you're going to try something new to modify your cough that you wouldn't have done 2 years ago. You wouldn't have thought anything of it. You just would have taken what your mother gave you 50 years ago, right? I mean, no. But now you want something new. You're going to broaden your mind into a new direction, falling in love with a pet, falling in love with animals and noticing their devotion, how they just want to make you happy, their abilities to serve you. I mean, look at seeing eye dogs. They just blow your mind.
Yeah, I know. And the loyalty and the love that's there is so real, so rich.
Yes, so real. Absolutely so real. Also cross-cultural cuisines. The sixth house is your food and how you eat, and you will experiment with different cuisines when Jupiter's going through your sixth house.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I love that, yeah. And then moving to the seventh house, we have, of course, that's the relationship house, so there's opportunity there as well.
Opportunities in relationships. Opportunities to fall in love with somebody who has a very philosophical bent, or who is or has been an educator, or has been or is a globetrotter, who can broaden your mind in ways that you weren't able to do yourself. They make you see things in a way that you didn't see it.
Mm-hmm.
Also, on the flip side of that, you may be in love with somebody who embodies all those principles, but they don't want to be tied down. They don't want to commit. Jupiter doesn't want to commit. They want to be free to come and go.
Yeah, they want to have the right to expand in any way, in any direction they choose. That's the problem.
That's right. Yeah, and relationship ties. Yeah, again, depending on their Saturn or wherever, anything else, it's just not their nature to be tied down all the time. They have to be free to come and go, as I said. Also, Jupiter going through your 7th house. If you're in a committed relationship now, your partner may start to do all these things.
Yeah.
Your partner may travel more than usual. They may read more than usual. They may hang out with more cross-cultural people than usual, and embrace an idea that they had not done previously and go run with it. They may want you to jump on their bandwagon. I don't know about that. That depends on your own chart, but your partner will embrace Jupiterian ideas, and they will insist on everybody putting all their cards on the table all the time.
Right. It's also your close friends too, so that brings that into account. Maybe some of your people in your peer group or your close friends, your conversations may become broader, deeper, more far-reaching, and that sort of helps to bind you together. You may form stronger relationships with closer friends, even if you've had them for years. You may reach a point where you become even closer with those friends. I think that's also possible.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yes, and you can discover things about your mate that you never knew, no matter how many years you lived with them.
Yeah, there's those tests come along, sort of those life challenges or tests, or even moments where you really begin to see a person's character. You may think you know somebody very well, and all of a sudden an event happens to them. It shows their real, true color, or their real, true backbone, and you may be amazed at that, because it may be, like you say, you find something out that really expands your view of that person, even if you've known them for a long time.
Right. Despite what you think, you're going to learn something new.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
And then we work into the 8th house. Of course, we know that's about religion and grandparents and big organizations. What do you see there?
Well, what I see, the 8th house, I see it as taxes, debt, loans, and the resources of the marriage, or of a long-term committed relationship. Doesn't have to be a legal marriage. It could also be a business partnership. Now, the 7th house is the marriage or the relationship. The 8th house is what you're going to do with it. It's the resources of the 7th house. Mm-hmm. So if you're in a relationship, you're going to find new ways to pool your funds, to pool your resources. Should we get a mortgage? Should we just pay rent? Should we pay this bill first, or should we put this on hold?
Yeah.
Do we purchase this on credit, or do we use cash? That sort of thing will come into very sharp focus when Jupiter's going through your 8th house.
Yeah, and again, it can work both ways. So you could have a loan be called in at that time, or you could be able to receive a loan. So it's work both ways.
Oh, very much so. Very much so. Also, the 8th house is inheritance. You could inherit at that time. Also with the 4th.
Yep, that's true. Yeah, you can see that happen in both cases there. Yeah.
Right, and the 8th is insurance and insurance policies, because that's other people's money. It could be life insurance policies. It could be the time that you get serious and purchase one.
Yeah, or you'll be the recipient of one. You could have, and that's, of course, that comes under the inheritance piece there.
Right, you could become.
Yeah,
right.
We move to the 9th house. That's the house that Jupiter rules, and so that's going to have certain panache to it.
Well, that's education, higher education, and travel, and ethics, and legal issues. And Jupiter has a field day in this house, and all of the above that I just said, education, ethics, legal issues, and other cultures, will take front and center stage through this next Jupiter transit, of everything about them and everything about the 9th house, particularly education, will become amplified and will become a key issue in the next year and a half. Tuition to education for colleges has already become so amplified and is so out of bounds for most people, right? I mean,
ridiculous.
You spend $60,000 for 1 year of college, and maybe you'll get a job, and maybe you won't, right? So that's a lot of money to risk. Funding for education is going to be a key issue. The definition of being educated will change, and it will undergo a transformation. because it can't remain the way it was because it's out of reach for so many people, particularly Americans.
And the thing is that, the irony of it is that you spend all this money to get what you think will be a job, then you're not always guaranteed you're going to get the job that you went to school for because times have changed or the demand isn't there. All of a sudden you find yourself up to your ears in debt and a job that doesn't come close to equaling the payments.
That's right. Also, the ninth house is law. And laws are going to change here. Mm-hmm. Laws are going to become amplified as to why they're even still on the books, and then the truth comes out and the laws have to change.
Yeah, very good.
They're going to have to change. I mean, look at like marijuana, all right, so in certain states it's legal, but not everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going more throughout the 50 states.
Yeah, well, the thing is that we're being. I mean, Mexico recently decriminalized it. Canada legalized it, so we're in the middle here, and we've got a handful of states that are progressive and legalizing it. It's only a matter of time before that gets turned over. I think, and it's just logical.
Yes, but I think it will be in the next year and a half when it comes to a head.
Yeah, I do too. Interesting thing.
Yeah, it'll be a year and a half, and it could be legal everywhere, generating more income.
Of course, it'd be a great source for income, a great source for jobs for people who haven't got that education or specialize in a different area. It's a wonderful place and of course, the money coming from there could be used to help offset taxes and education, lower the cost of education. So why not just jump in? In the United States, the one person who's really against it is the Attorney General, but he may be on a short leash these days, and who knows what happens after tomorrow if he's even around anymore. So we'll see what happens.
That's right.
Yeah, so
right.
That fly may be out of the ointment.
As it progresses through the 10th house, it can be a raise, it can be a promotion. The 10th house is your place in the world.
Right.
It's how people define you from a distance. Your ascendant is how people define you close up when they extend your hand, they shake your hand. But your ascendant, your midheaven is who you are in Times Square.
Right.
It's who you are in the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
And this is how you're going to stand out in the crowd when Jupiter goes through your 10th house. You will become either you will become a very ethical person, or you'll become more fundamental in your beliefs. Also, your windows on the world, the 10th house and your midheaven are your windows on the world, and that's going to become broadened and more global as Jupiter goes through your 10th house.
Yeah.
You will aspire to more than you thought possible in your daily life.
Mm-hmm. I suppose you could also be added, more responsibility could be added to you. In other words, if you are in a position where you do get a raise or something like that, a promotion, obviously that comes with more responsibility, and that may be a spotlight that shines on you with regard to your 10th house if Jupiter's in that part of your life.
It could also indicate travel for your job. Travel becomes an integral part of your career.
Absolutely, yeah.
Mm-hmm. It could be you would have to be heading to the airport every month for some reason or another. And it's, again, having to do that broadens your perspective because you're learning more about different places and different cultures. It only pitches you out. The 10th house is your status, and your status may improve when Jupiter goes through your 10th house. No matter how you cut the mustard, it's your status. And there's always a hierarchy, no matter what culture you're in, or whether you're in a hippie commune or at the Capitol building in D.C., there's always a hierarchy.
Yes.
And Jupiter will bring that hierarchy to a head and push you up in it.
Mm-hmm. And it can also be an opportunity to shift your jobs into a newer thing, a new sort of frame of reference. In other words, you may be let go from one job which wasn't right for you, and you put into something that's more in line with you. Those are options as well. So there's a great deal of promise there. But you have to I think you have to act strike when the iron's hot. So you've got to be prepared for when this stuff is happening. You've got to be out there in the midst of it and in this swirl of trying to make this happen. So that's why it's really important to know where these transits are in your individual chart, because then you can just be sitting there and just wait for this to happen, and it's just not going to fall from the sky. You've got to be proactive.
Oh, no, absolutely. You're so right. And Jupiter is luck. Sagittarius is luck. And luck is nothing but preparedness meeting opportunity. That's all that is. Mm-hmm. So you have to be able to go where the opportunities are. And also the 10th house is your career, and Jupiter is freedom. The 10th house may want to make you seek a more freelance career. Jupiter in the 10th, Sag midheaven.
Yeah.
They want these are your freelancers. Mm-hmm. Pisces midheaven. They don't want to be tied down to a schedule.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense, and that's a great way. And there's that freedom, and freedom is an expansive quality. So you might broaden. If you're a writer, a freelance writer, you could broaden your purview of subject matters that you're involved with. That's the kind of thing
right.
you're talking. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
exactly right. Now, Jupiter through your 11th, you're going to have a whole new circle of friends.
Yep.
Yep. You could become involved with humanitarian causes that impact people across the globe or in one other particular culture.
It's a collective.
Your aspirations, yes, it's the collective. It's groupthink.
Mm-hmm.
And you will become part of a groupthink that is progressive or will have a philosophical or religious undertone to it. It's also clubs and groups, organizations, play on a team, become part of a worthy cause.
Yeah.
The 11th is worthy causes.
It's kind of like community engagement. It's like it gives you an opportunity to get out and become engaged in a community, where maybe you wouldn't before in the past. You are now allowed to meet new people. Your expansion list, your address book expands. You meet
right.
And by having those connections, by virtue of a multitude of connections, that sort of constellation of people around you, your conversations become, bifocals, bi-directional, and as a result, ideas that spring from one person may spring one for you, and then vice versa. And a new germ arrives out of it. A germ of an idea arises out of it, and something new has taken place. So it's a great time for, reaching out and getting new people, forming new business alliances.
Exactly right. Very good. Yes, yeah. And now this is going through the 12th. This is when you take up meditation. This is when you increase your downtime. This is when you shut off the media, you shut off your TV screen, and you just be. And you come to terms with how you want to decompress and how you want to organize the quiet time in your life. It also rules escapism. And I see movies as a form of escapism. It's also the 5th, but it's a lot of the 12th, too, because you're going into these dark places and you're seeing this fantasy up on the wall, right? You know that's not happening, but you're totally caught up in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a form of escapism. And so you're going to go to the movies more often, or you're going to stay home and just... It can also mean being a couch potato because you don't want to go anywhere. You just tend to be more behind the scenes, but happy to do it. You're happy to shut out the world when Jupiter goes through your 12th house.
It's a time of it's a transitory stage as well. So you could be going from a period of, like you say, introvertedness or isolation to a period of time where you're going to step out and say, okay, I've done my woodshedding quiet time. Now I'm going to come out in the world, which then gets you ready for the first house, and you come out with a blast, and you sort of take off. Yeah, it's a time to gather your wits, I guess, for lack of a better word.
It's the ultimate regrouping.
Yeah, and rethinking where you're going and to restate. Because, every time you go, people do go through these periods of their lives where you have questions about, am I doing the right thing? Am I wasting my time? And you want to be able to maximize the placement of these situations in your life because it does provide an opportunity for you to change. You really have no one to thank but yourself if you don't take the opportunity to change. If you know where this is going on in your chart, and you can contact Jackie very easily at geocosmicstudies.com. That's one long word, geocosmicstudies.com. To get a reading, you can contact me as well. Even if just to get your own chart, just to get your chart so you know exactly where this is and get some easy lessons about how to figure out where this is, where the influence will be greatest, and how you can best maximize it. Because, as I always say, we are best prepared when we are best informed. And if we are informed, then you can prepare yourself to take this gigantic leap and expand your life in some way. Because Jupiter is all about optimism and expansion. So it's a wonderful time.
Yes, it's seize the day, as the Romans said, and it applies to this Jupiter transit very well.
Yeah. And I think that it bodes well. I think when we look down the road even further, we see Jupiter coming up in conjunction with Saturn and Pluto in the 2020s time frame. We can see a really, I'm not sure what are your thoughts on this, but I see a gigantic restructuring in some positive manner, a really large restructuring of some sort.
Oh, yes, there will be a restructuring of society and of the tax structure, of finances, of business. It will be completely different. There could also be natural disasters that redefine commerce and boundaries and how far people can go.
Right. I mean, when you think about how dependent we are on a digital medium, if something were to happen to the digital medium, that would be a crisis that would scream from the rooftop that we had to do something to change that and get back to paper. Or I can also see a natural disaster being a clarion call to arms for all of us, where we put down our arms and our differences, and we have to say, listen, we have to keep the planet going. This is the common enemy here. It's not each other. The common enemy is repairing this planet.
Exactly right. You took the words right out of my mouth. And it could take a natural catastrophe to bring that to a head, to make that happen.
Well, I think we become complacent until it does happen. I think we need to get that slap in the face. I think that's the only way we come to awareness, is to really have it be right in our faces. That's when you take action. Seems to be. So
you're absolutely right.
Anyway, so we have a great time. On coming up on November the 8th, we have Jupiter entering into Sagittarius for the first time in 12 years. It'll be there about 13 months or so. It's a great opportunity to expand an area of your life. I encourage you to contact Jackie, or you can contact me, whoever you want to. Contact anybody, any astrologer. Get an idea where Jupiter is in your life and how you can best maximize that, because it's a wonderful influence. You don't want it to pass by without doing something with it. You really want to be able to be proactive. I think being proactive is actually a Jupiterian word in itself, so it's the right thing to do.
Yes, I would agree.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we've run out of time, Jackie, unfortunately. I thought we would. The time always goes by very quickly, but it's always great fun to talk about astrology, and I'm excited about Jupiter coming into Sagittarius. I think it's a wonderful time. I look back to where I was 12 years ago. As I said, that's when I started my radio show, and here I am still here, and maybe it'll be the next level. Who knows? But I'm excited about it. I hope you all are. I encourage you to reach out to Jackie. Her website is Geocosmic Studies. That's GeoCosmic Studies.com, geocosmicstudies.com. Jackie Slevin is her name, and she's a wonderful astrologer out of New Jersey. And I encourage you to reach out to her and get a reading, or at least buy her book, Finding Success in the Horoscope. And what better way to find success in the horoscope than to know where your Jupiter is? So, Jackie, thank you so much for coming on today. It was great having you on to talk.
Oh, thank you very much, Chris. I had a wonderful time.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay.
You've been listening to Turning of the Wheel with your host, Chris Flisher. To schedule a reading with me or to order artwork, you may visit my website at www.turningofthewheel.com. That's www.turningofthewheel.com. Or you can call me at 978-393-1036. Thank you. And as always, be open to possibilities.